The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat in curved rows that reached up to the ceiling. The air buzzed with nervous energy as different species whispered to each other. In their own languages, translation devices worked overtime to keep up with all the conversations. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly to the center of the hall. His blue skin had lost its usual bright color. Dark circles under his 4 eyes showed he had not slept in days. The tall Altanian had seen many terrible things in his long life, but nothing compared to what he was about to discuss. The hall fell silent as he reached the speaking platform. Even the youngest delegates knew this was not a normal meeting. Emergency sessions were rare. Emergency sessions about the Outer Rim worlds meant only one thing. The beast was active again. Zethkar cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice carried clearly through the hall's sound system. Fellow members of the council, we face a crisis that threatens not just our borders, but our very way of life. The Valdroken Titan has awakened once more. A wave of fear rippled through the crowd. Some delegates stood up and started talking loudly. Others sat frozen in their seats. The Corvex warrior delegation began checking their weapons. Everyone had heard the stories. Everyone knew what that name meant. The Titan had first appeared 300 years ago. No one knew where it came from or who had created it. Some said it was a weapon from an ancient war. Others believed it was the result of genetic experiments gone wrong. Few thought it might be a punishment sent by angry gods. What everyone agreed on was simple. The Valdroken Titan was the most dangerous creature the galaxy had ever seen. It stood 50 meters tall, taller than most buildings. Its body was covered in thick armor that seemed to be part of its skin. The armor was black as space and harder than diamond. Weapons that could destroy planets barely scratched it. Its 4 massive arms ended in claws that could cut through reality itself. When it moved those claws, space would bend and twist around them. The creature had 6 legs like tree trunks. Each step it took would crack the ground for kilometers around. Its head was the worst part. 12 eyes of different sizes covered its face. Each eye could see things that should not exist, some said. Looking into those eyes would drive a person mad. Others said the eyes could see into the future and the past at the same time. But the most frightening thing about the Titan was not how it looked. It was what it could do. The beast could eat entire forests in a single day. It would consume every living thing on a planet and then somehow digest the planet itself. Rocks, metal, water, air, everything became food for the Titan. When it was done feeding, nothing would be left except empty space. Military fleets had tried to stop it. The combined navies of 12 species had attacked it at once. Their most powerful weapons had hit the creature directly. Antimatter bombs that could crack moons had exploded against its armor. The Titan had not even slowed down. Instead, it had somehow absorbed the energy from the explosions and become stronger. The creature seemed to enjoy the attacks. It would stand still and let the weapons hit it. Then it would roar with what sounded like laughter. Out. The sound of its roar could be heard across entire star systems. Ships that got too close would simply fall apart as the sound. Waves tore them to pieces. Zethkar continued his report to the Silent Hall. The containment systems on worlds 7 through 12 are holding, but barely. The energy requirements are draining our power grids. We estimate we have perhaps 6 months before the systems fail completely. The containment project had been the greatest engineering feat in galactic history. 12 entire worlds had been sacrificed to build the prison. Each planet had been turned into a massive cage using technology from every advanced species in the galaxy. The first world had quantum locks that bent space and time. Reality itself was twisted into knots around the Titan. The second world had force, fields powered by the energy of an entire star. The third world had biosuppressors that could put any living thing to sleep. Each world added another layer to the prison. It had taken 50 years to build the containment system. The cost in resources and lives had been enormous. Entire species had gone bankrupt helping to pay for it. Millions of engineers and workers had given their lives to complete the project, and still, the Titan fought against its prison every single day. The creature never stopped trying to break free. It would slam against the barriers with force that made stars shake. It would try to claw through reality itself. Sometimes it would just scream until the very fabric of space began to crack. The maintenance crews that kept the prison running were the bravest beings in the galaxy. They had to work near the creature while it raged against its bonds. Many of them went insane from the stress. Others simply disappeared, as if the Titan had somehow reached through the barriers and pulled them into its cage. "There's more," Zethkar said, his voice growing even more serious. "We have received a transmission from an unknown ship, claimed to be from a species called humans. They are requesting passage through the containment zone." The hall erupted in chaos. Dozens of delegates began shouting at once. The idea that anyone would willingly go near the Titan was madness. The containment zone was marked with warnings in every known language. Any ship that entered the zone was assumed to be either lost or suicidal. Zethkar raised his hand for silence. When the noise died down, he played the transmission for everyone to hear. A clear voice filled the hall. It belonged to someone who called herself Captain Sarah Chen. Her tone was calm and professional, as if she was asking for directions to a market. "This is Captain Chen of the human vessel Persistence. We are requesting passage through your restricted zone. Our destination is the trading post at Kepler Station. We have checked our charts and this appears to be the fastest route. Please advise if there are any fees or special requirements for transit." The transmission ended. The hall remained silent for several minutes. Finally, Commander Vextel of the Corvex Deep Guard stood up. His people were known as the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. They had fought the Titan longer than anyone else. His voice was rough from years of shouting battle orders. "Did they not receive our warnings about the creature?" he asked. Zethkar nodded slowly. "We transmitted full data about the Titan and the containment zone. Their response was to ask about the size of the creature and whether it was dangerous." To shipping. Another long silence filled the hall. The idea that someone would be so casual about the Valdrokan Titan was almost impossible to understand. "What did you tell them?" asked the delegate from the Zealothi Collective. "We explained that. The creature has terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries. We told them about the 12 worlds we sacrificed to contain it. We warned them that approaching the containment zone meant certain death, and their response." Zethkar looked around the hall at all the worried faces staring back at him. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Captain Chen asked if we needed help with our monster problem." Captain Sarah Chen stepped off her ship and onto the docking platform of Kepler 440C. The human woman was smaller than everyone expected. She barely reached the shoulder of the shortest Altanian guard. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a plain blue uniform with no decorations or medals. The welcoming committee had prepared for many things. They had weapons ready in case the humans were hostile. They had medical teams standing by in case the humans were sick or injured. They had translation equipment in case the humans spoke a difficult language. What they had not prepared for was how normal she looked. Commander Vextel watched from the observation deck as Chen walked across the platform. The Corvex warrior had fought in 100 battles. He had seen creatures that could tear apart starships with their bare hands. He had faced enemies that could kill with a single glance. But something about this small human woman made him nervous. Maybe it was the way she walked. Chen moved like someone who had never been afraid of anything in her life. She did not hurry or look around nervously. She just walked at a steady pace, as if she was taking a stroll through a park. Maybe it was the way she looked at things. Her dark eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail. She noticed the heavy weapons pointed at her ship. She saw the blast. Shields that had been raised around the docking area. She counted the number of guards and the exits they were blocking. But she did not seem worried about any of it. Or maybe it was the small smile on her face. It was not a mean smile or a crazy smile. It was the kind of smile someone might have when they were looking forward to solving an interesting puzzle. "Welcome to Kepler 440C, Captain Chen," said Dr. Yilith, the station's chief scientist. The tall Zealothi woman had been chosen to greet The human, because her species was known for being calm and diplomatic. We hope your journey was comfortable. Not too bad, Chen replied in perfect galactic standard. Though I have to say, your security is impressive. Most systems don't have this many battleships just sitting around. Dr. Yelith glanced nervously at the fleet surrounding the station. 50 dreadnoughts from 6 different species hung in space, like sleeping giants. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. Those are part of our containment protocols. As we explained in our transmissions, this area contains a very dangerous creature. Chen nodded as if they were discussing the weather. Right, the big one you've got locked up. Mind if I take a look at your setup? I'm curious about the technical details. The request sent shockwaves through the command center. No one had ever asked to see the Titan before. Most species went out of their way to avoid even thinking about the creature. A few scientists who studied it had to take special drugs to prevent nightmares. But Commander Vexthal found himself saying yes. He could not explain why. Something about the way Chen asked made it seem like a reasonable request. The tour began in the monitoring station. Hundreds of screens showed data from the containment systems. Energy levels, structural stress readings, quantum field stability reports. The numbers changed constantly as the Titan fought against its prison. Chen studied the displays with interest. She asked questions about power consumption and field geometry. Her questions were simple, but showed she understood complex physics. Dr. Yelith found herself explaining technical details she had never shared with outsiders. These quantum locks are clever, Chen said, pointing at a display. You're using dimensional folding to create a space that's bigger on the inside than the outside. That gives you room to absorb the creature's kinetic energy without the fields breaking. Dr. Yelith stared at the human. It had taken her team 5 years to develop that technology. Chen had understood it in 5 minutes. They moved deeper into the facility. The walls grew thicker, and the security became heavier. Blast doors that could stop antimatter explosions sealed behind them as they walked. The air itself seemed to get thicker as they approached the creature's prison. Finally, they reached the observation chamber. The Valdrokan Titan hung in the center of a sphere of pure energy. The containment field glowed bright blue around its massive form. The creature was not sleeping. Its 12 eyes moved constantly, searching for any weakness in its prison. Its forearms reached out toward the walls, claws extended but unable to touch anything solid. Most people who saw the Titan, for the first time, fell to their knees in terror. Some started screaming. Others fainted or ran away. The creature's presence seemed to press against the mind like a weight. Chen walked up to the observation window and put her hands behind her back. She tilted her head slightly as she studied the beast. Her expression was the same one she might wear while looking at an interesting piece of art. Impressive, she said after a few minutes. Though I have to ask, why not just kill it? The question hit the room like a bomb. Commander Vexthal stepped forward, his hand moving automatically to his weapon. Kill it, Captain. We have tried everything. Antimatter bombs, singularity weapons, temporal displacement devices. Nothing has worked. The creature absorbs energy, attacks and grows stronger. Physical weapons cannot penetrate its armor. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Have you tried biological approaches? Neural disruption? Targeted toxins? Biological weapons are banned by Galactic Treaty, Dr. Yelith said quickly. Besides, the creature's biology is unlike anything we understand. Our scientists believe it may not even be truly alive in the conventional sense, Chen said. She pulled a small device from her belt and looked at it. The device was about the size of a human hand and had several buttons on it. It looked like something a child might play with. Mind if I give it a shot? The silence that followed was complete. Even the Titan seemed to stop moving for a moment. Commander Vexthal found his voice first. Captain, I must strongly advise against any action that might compromise the containment systems. The safety protocols exist for very good reasons. Chen looked at him with that same small smile. Oh, I'm not going to break anything. I just want to see if this works. She held up the device again. It made a soft beeping sound. See, back on Earth we have a saying. If you want to kill something, you need to understand what makes it alive. This little gadget was designed by my daughter for her science project. She was studying how neural networks process information. Your offspring created a weapon? Dr. Yillith asked in shock. Well, she called it a biological systems analyzer. But yeah, it can do more than just analyze. Chen pressed a button on the device and studied the small screen. Interesting. Your monster there has a very complex nervous system, much more complex than it needs for basic functions. Someone definitely built this thing. She pressed another button. The device made a different beeping sound. The good news is, complex systems usually have simple weak points. The more complicated something is, the easier it is to break. And this thing, she pointed at the Titan, is definitely overcomplicated. Chen looked around at the shocked faces watching her. Scientists, soldiers, and diplomats from across the galaxy stood frozen in place. Some of them had spent their entire careers studying the Titan. Others had lost friends and family to its rampages. And this small human woman was talking about it like it was a broken machine that needed fixing. So, Chen said cheerfully, who's got the keys to this cage? The request hung in the air like a dangerous smell. Captain Chen stood calmly in front of the observation window, waiting for an answer. Behind her, the Valdroken Titan pressed against its energy prison. 12 eyes focused on the small human. Figure, Commander Vextel, felt his hearts beating faster. In all his years as a warrior, he had never heard anyone ask to be let closer to the galaxy's most dangerous creature. Captain, you cannot be serious. The containment protocols exist. For the safety of everyone in this system? I understand your concern, Chen replied, not taking her eyes off the Titan. But I promise I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just need to get close enough for a proper scan. Dr. Yillith stepped forward, her pale skin even whiter than usual. The containment field cannot be lowered without approval from the Council. Even if we wanted to help you, the security systems require authorization codes from 3 different species. Chen turned around and smiled at them. It was the same calm. A smile she had worn since arriving. That's okay. I don't need you to lower the field. She walked over to the main control panel. The security station was protected by the most advanced locks in the galaxy: quantum encryption, biometric scanners, and neural pattern recognition. All worked together to keep unauthorized people away from the controls. Chen pulled out a small cable from her device and plugged it. Into a port on the panel, alarms started screaming immediately. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. Automated voices began announcing security breaches in 6 different languages. Emergency blast doors slammed shut, sealing the observation chamber. But Chen just stood there, watching numbers scroll across her device's tiny screen. Fascinating, she said over the noise of the alarms. Your security is really impressive. Triple redundancy, quantum locks, the works. My daughter would love this. The control panel's main screen flickered and changed. Instead of the normal security warnings, it now showed a simple message. Access granted. Welcome, Sarah. Commander Vextel drew his weapon, but he did not know what to point it at. The human had somehow bypassed 3 centuries of galactic security technology in less than 10 seconds. How did you do that? Trade secret, Chen replied cheerfully. She began pressing buttons on the control panel. Don't worry, I'm not going to break anything important. The containment field around the Titan began to shimmer. The blue energy that had held the creature for decades started to fade. In the center of the field, the massive beast sensed the change immediately. The Titan's roar shook the entire station. The sound was beyond anything the emergency systems had been designed to handle. Cracks appeared in the observation window. The floor vibrated so hard that several people fell down, but the worst part was not the noise. As the containment field weakened, the creature's presence seemed to fill the room. It was like standing next to a black hole made of pure hatred. The Titan's 12 eyes fixed on the small group of watchers. Its 4 massive arms reached toward them, claws extended. Dr. Yillith fell to her knees, unable to breathe. Commander Vextel felt his weapon drop from numb fingers. The other scientists and guards in the room pressed themselves against the walls, trying to get as far away as possible. Only Chen seemed unaffected. She stood in front of the failing containment field, device in hand, watching the Titan with professional interest. There we go, she said, as if she was adjusting a broken television. Much better signal now. The containment field disappeared completely. The Valdroken Titan stood free for the first time in 300 years. Its massive form seemed to fill the entire chamber. Reality bent around its claws as it raised all four arms above its head. Its roar of triumph could be heard on ships at the edge of the system. The creature looked down at the tiny human standing in front of it. For a moment, predator and prey stared at each other. The Titan had destroyed civilizations. It had eaten entire worlds. It had fought fleets of starships. And one Sarah Chen looked up at the monster that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. She checked her watch, raised her small device, and pressed a single button. The device made a sound. Not a dramatic explosion or a flash of energy. Just a simple electronic beep. Like a kitchen timer finishing its countdown. The Valdroken Titan stopped roaring. The massive creature swayed on its 6 legs. Its 12 eyes went from burning hatred to confusion to emptiness. Its 4 arms dropped to its sides. The reality-warping energy around its claws faded away. Then the Titan fell forward. The impact when it hit the floor was like a small earthquake. The body crashed down with a sound like a mountain falling. Dust and debris filled the air. The lights flickered from the shock of the impact. When the dust settled, the Valdroken Titan lay motionless on the chamber floor. Its eyes were dark. Its massive chest did not rise and fall. The creature that had been the galaxy's greatest nightmare was simply gone. Sarah Chen looked at her watch again and made a note on her device. 32 seconds, she said to herself. Not bad, but I've done better. The silence in the observation chamber was complete. No one moved. No one even seemed to be breathing. Commander Vextel stared at the dead creature through the cracked window. His mind could not process what he had just seen. The beast that had required 12 worlds to contain was lying dead after 30 seconds. With a human. How? Dr. Yelith whispered. Her voice was so quiet it could barely be heard. Chen unplugged her device from the control panel and put it back on her belt. Neural disruption, she explained in the same tone she might use to describe making coffee. The creature had a very complex nervous system. Too complex, really. My device just sent the right frequency to overload its brain functions. She looked around at the shocked faces staring at her. You know, you really didn't need to build such an elaborate prison. The Titan was basically just a very large biological computer. Shut down the computer and the body stops working. Commander Vextel found his voice, though it came out as a croak. That device? What is it? Neural disruptor, Chen replied. My daughter built it for her science fair project last year. She was studying how electric fields affect brain activity in large organisms. Won second place, actually. She was a bit disappointed about that. The translation systems in the room struggled with the concept Chen had used. After several seconds, they settled on adolescent educational competition. The idea that a human child had casually invented a weapon capable of killing the Valdroken Titan was impossible to understand. Chen walked back to the observation window and looked down at the creature's body. You know, humans have been dealing with monsters like this for thousands of years. We call them kaiju, or giants, or dragons, depending on where you're from. The trick is not to be scared of them. Fear makes you stupid, and stupid gets you eaten. Turn back to the group of aliens who were still staring at her in shock. The real question is, how did something like this get loose in the first place? Someone built this thing as a weapon. That someone might still be out there. Dr. Yelith managed to stand up on shaking legs. Captain, what you have done here today will change everything. The council will want to meet with you immediately. Chen nodded. I figured they might. But first, I should probably call my ship and let them know I'll be a bit late for dinner. My crew worries when I'm gone too long. She pulled out a small communication device and pressed a button. Chen 2, persistence. The monster problem is solved. I'll be ready for pickup in about an hour. A voice crackled back through the communicator. Copy that, Captain. Was it a big one? Chen looked down at the Titan's massive corpse. Bigger than the one we dealt with last month, but not by much. Tell Jenkins he owes me 10 credits. He said it would take less than a minute. As she put the communicator away, Chen noticed that everyone in the room was still staring at her. What? Did I miss something? Commander Vextel realized that his mouth was hanging open. He closed it and tried to think of something to say. Finally, he managed to ask the question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Captain Chen, exactly how many creatures like this have humans encountered?
Oh,
Sarah Chen thought about it. For a moment, then she shrugged. I don't know the exact number. We stopped counting after the first 1,000. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's history. Representatives from every major species had arrived within hours of receiving the news. The Great Hall buzzed with nervous energy as delegates argued. In dozens of languages, Ambassador Zethkar stood at the central podium, trying to maintain order. His blue skin had gone almost white with stress. In 3 centuries of diplomatic service, he had never faced a situation like this. The Valdroken Titan, the creature that had defined galactic policy for generations, was dead. Killed by a single human in 32 seconds. Order. Order. Zethkar called out, his voice amplified by the hall's speakers. We must approach this situation with calm and reason. Calm, shouted General Krextos of the Vegan Empire. The massive reptilian warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scales bristling with anger. An unknown species has just demonstrated the ability to destroy our most secure facilities. How can we be calm? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Many delegates were thinking the same thing. If humans could kill the Titans so easily, what else could they do? Were any of their defenses safe? The human claims it was a simple neural disruptor, said Dr. Varnkiel, the Council's chief scientist. His tentacles writhed nervously as he spoke. But our analysis of the device shows technology we do not understand. The power source alone should be impossible. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the witness chair at the center of the hall. She looked small and out of place, surrounded by beings twice her size. Her simple blue uniform stood out among the elaborate robes and armor worn by the other delegates. But her calm expression had not changed since she arrived. She had been answering questions for 6 hours straight. The same questions asked in different ways by different species. How had she killed the Titan? What weapons did humanity possess? Were humans planning to invade galactic space? Chen answered each question with the same patient tone she might use to explain something to a curious child. Yes, the neural disruptor was human technology. No, it was not particularly advanced by human standards, as other humans had similar devices. Captain Chen, said Counselor Yithmora of the Zealothi Collective. You claim this device was created by your offspring for an educational project? Our experts find this difficult to believe. Chen nodded. I understand your confusion. But humans start learning about science very young. My daughter Sarah is 15 years old. She's been building electronic devices since she was 8. The translation system struggled again with human-age concepts. When they finally worked out that Chen was talking about an adolescent, several delegates made sounds of disbelief. You allow children to work with dangerous technology? Asked Dr. Varenkiel. We don't consider neural disruptors particularly dangerous, Chen replied. They're designed to be safe. The worst thing that usually happens is you give yourself a mild headache if you test it wrong. This statement caused an uproar. The device that had killed the galaxy's most feared creature was considered safe enough for children to play with. Several delegates began shouting demands for humanity to be classified as a hostile species. Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I think there's been a misunderstanding. You see this as a weapon because of what it did to your Titan. But the disruptor wasn't designed to kill anything. It was designed to study how brains work. Then how did it destroy the creature? Demanded General Krextos. Chen shrugged. The Titan had a very complex nervous system. More complex than it needed for basic functions. When my daughter's device scanned it, the feedback loop caused a cascade failure. Basically, the creature's brain tried to process too much information at once and shut down. She paused and looked around the hall. The real question is why someone built a creature with such an unstable neural network. That wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to create a monster that could be controlled. The implications of this statement hit the delegates like a cold wave. If the Titan had been designed to be controlled, then someone had been using it as a weapon. Someone had been directing its attacks for 3 centuries. Who would do such a thing? Whispered Ambassador Zethkar. That's what you need to figure out, Chen said, because whoever created the Titan probably has more of them. And now that they know someone can kill their monsters easily, they might try a different approach. The hall fell silent as delegates considered this possibility. The Titan had been terrible enough on its own. The idea that it might have been just one weapon in a larger arsenal was almost too frightening to think about. Counselor Yuthmara leaned forward in her seat. Captain Chen, your species has encountered creatures like the Titan before. Times, Chen thought for a moment. Well, we stopped keeping detailed records after the first 1,000 incidents. But I'd estimate we deal with something like this maybe once or twice a year. The silence that followed was deafening. 1 or 2. Creatures like the Valdroken Titan every year. For how long? How long has humanity been fighting these monsters? Asked Dr. Varnkiel. Recorded history goes back about 5,000 years, Chen replied. But the oldest cave paintings suggest we've been dealing with large predators for much longer? Maybe 20,000 years, give or take? General Krexto sat down heavily in his chair. His people were considered the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. They had fought the Titan for decades and barely survived. The idea that humans had been casually dealing with similar creatures for millennia was impossible to process. Your weapons technology must be incredibly advanced, he said weakly. Chen shook her head. Not really. Most of the time we don't use weapons at all. The trick is understanding what you're fighting. Every monster has a weakness. You just have to find it, but the neural disruptor began, Dr. Varnkiel. Is a scanner that my daughter modified, Chen interrupted. She added the feedback function because she wanted to see how different brain patterns would react to stimulus. It's basically a very sophisticated medical device. She pulled the device from her belt and held it up. Ow. This particular model is about 3 years old. Sarah built a newer version last month that's twice as effective and half the size. She's thinking about entering it in the Planetary Science Fair. The delegates stared at the small device that had ended their greatest nightmare. It looked like a toy. The fact that it was outdated human technology built by a teenager was almost insulting. Captain Chen, said Ambassador Zethkar carefully, what would happen if humanity decided to use its technology for military purposes? Chen looked surprised by the question. Why would we do that? We have everything we need on Earth. We're explorers, not conquerors. We came out here to meet new people and learn new things, but surely your species has armies. Weapons of war? Of course we do, Chen replied. Earth is a dangerous place. We need to be able to defend ourselves. But our real military technology stays on Earth. What I carry is just basic survival gear. The implications of this statement were staggering. If a teenager's science project could kill the Valdroken Titan, what could actual human military technology? What kind of threats exist on your world that require such defenses? Asked Counselor Y. Chen smiled for the first time during the session. Oh, you know, the usual things. Giant sea monsters, flying predators, underground burrowers, things that hunt in packs, things that can camouflage themselves, things that can regenerate from almost any injury. She paused and looked around at the shocked faces staring at her. The really dangerous ones are the smart ones. We've got a few species that are almost as intelligent as humans, but much more aggressive. Those are the ones that keep our military busy. General Krextos found his voice. Captain, are you saying that Earth contains multiple species as dangerous as the Valdroken Titan? Oh, more dangerous, Chen replied cheerfully. The Titan was big and scary, but it wasn't very smart. It used brute force for everything. The really dangerous creatures are the ones that can think and plan and adapt. She stood up and stretched, as if she'd been sitting through a boring meeting instead of the most important diplomatic session in galactic history. Look, I understand this is a lot to process, but humanity isn't interested in conquering anybody. We just want to trade and explore and maybe help with problems like your Titan situation. Chen looked around the hall one more time. The offer stands, by the way. If you've got any other monsters that need dealing with, just give us a call. My crew is always looking for interesting challenges. She walked toward the exit. The hall remained silent. Every delegate sat frozen in their seats, trying to process what they had just learned. Finally, Ambassador Zethkar spoke the question that was on everyone's mind. What have we gotten ourselves into? 6 months had passed since the death of the Valdrokan Titan. The galaxy felt different now. The trade routes that had been closed for centuries were open again. Colonies that had lived in fear could finally expand. Children on 1,000 worlds no longer had nightmares about the monster that lived in the dark, but the changes went deeper than just the absence of the Titan. 3 more legendary creatures had been destroyed in those 6 months. The void swimmers of the Antares Nebula, creatures that had made space travel impossible in that region for 200 years. It's gone in 45 seconds. Killed by a human teenager on a school trip who wanted to collect samples for her biology class. The crystal hive of Proxima 7, a growing mass of living rock that had consumed 3 star systems. Destroyed by a human engineer who treated it like a computer virus and simply deleted its core programming. The Shadow Fleet. Ghost ships that had appeared without warning to attack colonies for over a century, stopped by a human child who pointed out that they were just holograms with basic AI programming. He had turned them off, using what he called a simple override code. Each incident followed the same pattern. Humans would encounter something the galaxy considered unstoppable. They would study it for a few minutes. Then they would solve the problem using tools that most species considered toys. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership. It was not entirely a choice. When beings could casually destroy your greatest threats, it was better to have them as friends than enemies. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the Great Hall of the Council, wearing the same simple, blue uniform she had worn 6 months ago. But now she carried the title of Human Ambassador to the Galactic Council. The promotion had been automatic after the 3rd monster incident. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's speakers. I want to thank you again for welcoming humanity into the galactic community. The trade agreements we've signed will benefit everyone involved. The response was polite but nervous applause. Most delegates still were not sure how to react to humans. On one hand, they were clearly peaceful and friendly. On the other hand, their children could accidentally destroy things that had terrified entire civilizations. Before I return to Earth, Chen continued, I want to address some concerns that have been raised about human capabilities. So many of you are worried about what my species might do with our technology? The hall fell silent. This was the conversation everyone had been waiting for, but no one wanted to start. First, let me be clear about something. What you've seen from humans so far is not our military technology. The neural disruptor that killed the Titan was a student science project. The quantum analyzer that destroyed the crystal hive was a standard geological survey tool. The code override that stopped the Shadow Fleet was written by a 12-year-old as a computer game. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea that humanity's casual problem-solving gear was more effective than their best weapons was still hard to accept. The reason we can handle these creatures so easily is not because we have super weapons. It's because we've been dealing with similar problems for thousands of years. When you grow up on a world where everything wants to kill you, you get good at finding solutions. Ambassador Zethkar raised his hand. Captain Chen, what kind of threats does Earth face that require such advanced defensive measures? Chen smiled, but there was something different about the expression. It was still friendly, but there was an edge to it that had not been there before. That's actually what I wanted to talk about. See, the creatures you've been fighting in this galaxy are not natural. Someone has been creating them and setting them loose. We've confirmed this by analyzing the remains of all 4 monsters. A wave of shocked murmurs went through the hall. The suspicion had been growing since Chen first mentioned it, but having it confirmed was still disturbing. The good news is, we know who's been doing it. The bad news is, they're not from this galaxy. The murmurs stopped. Complete silence filled the hall. Our long-range sensors have detected artificial constructs moving through dark space toward this galaxy. Based on their design and energy signatures, they match the technology used to create the monsters. We estimate they'll arrive in approximately 2 years. General Krextos stood up, his scales bristling with tension. An invasion fleet. That's our best guess, Chen replied. The pattern fits. Send monsters ahead to weaken the local defenses. Study how the inhabitants react, then follow up with a main force when resistance is lowest. Dr. Varnkiel's tentacles writhed nervously. How many ships are coming? Our computers estimate between 10 and 50,000 vessels, depending on their exact configuration. Some of them are larger than anything in our current databases. The number hit the delegates like a physical blow. Combined fleets of all galactic species together might field 5,000 ships on a good day. They were facing an enemy with 10 times their numbers and unknown technology. What do you recommend? Asked Counselor Ythmora, her voice barely above a whisper. Chen's smile returned. In this time, it was the same confident expression she had worn when facing the Titan. Well, the first thing we need to do is strengthen galactic defenses. Been authorized to share some basic human technology with council members. Nothing too advanced, just some improvements to your shield generators and weapon systems. She paused and looked around the hall. The second thing is to prepare for the arrival of additional human forces. Earth has decided to take a more active role in galactic defense. How many ships can humanity provide? Asked General Krextos. We're not sending ships, Chen replied. We're sending people. Specifically, we're sending our children. The translation system struggled with this concept for several seconds before settling on the most literal interpretation. The delegates stared at Chen in shock. Sending children to fight an invasion? Ambassador Zethkar asked in disbelief. Not children exactly, Chen corrected. Teenagers. Students from our military academies and technical schools. Think of it as a field trip with practical applications. She pulled out a datapad and consulted it. We're planning to send about 50,000 students, along with their teachers and equipment. They'll arrive over the next 18 months to help upgrade your defenses and train local forces. The number was staggering. Humanity was casually offering to send more people than most species had in their entire military. Captain, said Dr. Varnkiel carefully, what kind of training do these students receive? The usual things, Chen replied. Basic survival skills, problem-solving techniques, equipment maintenance, monster identification and disposal, emergency engineering, tactical analysis. You know, normal school subjects. The idea that monster disposal was a normal school subject was almost too much to process. There's one more thing, Chen continued. I mentioned earlier that what you've seen from humans is not our military technology. I thought you should know what is. She pressed a button on her datapad. The hall's main display activated, showing an image that would be burned into the delegates' memories forever. It was Earth, seen from space. But surrounding the planet was a defensive grid that defied understanding. Massive structures floated, in perfect formation, connected by energy beams that pulsed with power. Space itself seemed to bend around the installations. This is our home defense system, Chen explained casually. It's designed to protect Earth from the kind of threats we face regularly. The structures you see there could each destroy a small moon, if necessary. She pressed another button. The image changed to show sleek ships emerging from hidden bases. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. These are our actual military vessels. We keep them close to home because, frankly, most of the galaxy isn't ready for this level of technology. General Krextos stared at the ships on the screen. Each one looked like it could fight his entire fleet and win. How many of these vessels does humanity possess? Chen consulted her datapad again. Current active fleet strength is classified, but I can tell you that we maintain enough ships to defend against threats significantly larger than what's heading toward this galaxy. She put the datapad away and looked around the hall one final time. The bottom line is this. Humanity is committed to defending our new galactic neighbors. The invasion force heading this way has been terrorizing galaxies for thousands of years. They've destroyed countless civilizations and consumed entire Star clusters. Her expression grew serious. But they've never faced humans before. They've never encountered a species that considers giant monsters a minor inconvenience. They're about to learn why Earth produces the kind of children who can kill legendary beasts with science fair projects. Chen walked toward the exit then, stopped and turned back to the stunned delegates. Oh, and one more thing. I should probably mention that the invasion fleet you're worried about, our computers classify it as a minor border incursion. The really dangerous threats are still back in their home galaxy. As the doors closed behind her, the hall remained silent for nearly an hour. Finally, Ambassador Zethkar spoke the words. That would become the unofficial motto of the new Galactic Alliance. I think we're going to be okay.